Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the FinTech Association of Hong Kong's panel session on digital banking system. I'm Jessica, co-chair of FTAHK, Digital Banking and Payments Committee, and also a founding member of Plantio. Today, we have with us a group of distinguished panelists, including Maggie Yung, Head of Digital Customer Experiences and Ecosystems at DBS Bank, Gary Lam, CTO of Livi Bank, and Marc Entwistle, who is a board member of FTAHK. So today we'll be exploring, they will be exploring with us this rapidly evolving topic around how digital ecosystems create customer value. So first, for those who may not be too familiar with FTAHK, we will have Rafael Jensa, General Manager of the FinTech Association of Hong Kong, to give us a bit of an introduction on FTAHK.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. Please allow me to share my screen. Perfect. And also a warm welcome from me. Obviously, this is a public event, therefore we have also people that are not members of the FinTech Association here. So I'd like to give a little bit of 5-minute explanation of who we are and what we do. So the FinTech Association Hong Kong is a non-for-profit organization and arguably Asia's biggest FinTech association, at least by means of size of its members. We are built by the community for the community, and we aspire to be the voice of the Hong Kong FinTech ecosystem. We are very inclusive, and our members come from all walks of life of the FinTech and in FinTech. Our mission and therefore our activities circle around 3 core values that are called advocate, collaborate, and educate. Now, what is meant by advocate is to provide not only thought leadership, but also work together with stakeholders such as regulators to drive the regulatory landscape in Hong Kong and beyond. Collaboration means we are partnering with a lot of players within the Hong Kong FinTech ecosystem, and education is around sharing knowledge, sharing experiences with all our members. So this picture here depicts a little bit what I meant under advocacy and collaboration. Strong connectivity with our regulators, but equally with industry bodies that you know from the classic maybe banking industries, but also government-backed bodies such as the Science Technology Park, Invest Hong Kong, and Cyberport and the likes thereof. As I said, our members come from all walks of life, and which you see represented here. Not only companies, frankly, we also have individuals and even students that are part of it. So our goal is, as I said earlier on, holistically to represent the FinTech ecosystem in Hong Kong, and doing that in Hong Kong and beyond Hong Kong. And therefore, you can see here that you have early stage FinTechs, more seasoned FinTechs, but equally also seasoned technology companies, banks, law firms, and insurances. Our activities and therefore our subject matter expertise is centered in our 8 committees or working groups, as you may want to call, and we represent all the relevant topics that are most prominent in our Hong Kong FinTech ecosystem, and you can see from AI and big data all the way down to wealth tech. Now, our members do play their active part in there. Our members do not only work in one of the committees. They have access to share knowledge across all 8 of them, and can be active in all 8 of them going forward as well. Now, for this very group, those 2 people you will see here, they're part of the digital banking and payment stream, which obviously then makes sense if you look at today's topic. And I would like to share maybe just some committee highlights. These pictures, pretty much speak for itself, but it's just to give you a flavor of the topics that we are covering from an education point of view or knowledge sharing point of view. So you can see everything from driven by the wealth tech team, from the insurance stream. But very often these topics are not siloed, so you cannot say, oh, this is a topic that only caters to wealth tech. Very often this cuts across multiple disciplines, and therefore also our committees do not work in silos. Actually, there's a very holistic and connectivity amongst our different committees. So I think that's it for the committee part. As I mentioned earlier on, A as an advocacy is still key, and we take a lot of pride in having established a strong rapport with the different regulators we have in Hong Kong, and our responses are really treasured by them as the response by the fintech ecosystem in Hong Kong, and we have been doing this and continue to do so. You see a selection here of either advocacy parts in terms of regulatory responses or also thought leadership that we've been providing. We continue to do so, as I said. Right now, at this very moment, we are actually also formalizing a response again, the second try or second round of consultation for the retail CBDC, the e-Hong Kong dollar rollout in Hong Kong. Yep, some previous years highlights, and with that, I probably can finish my presentation and may hand over to Jessica again. And I wish all of you a very fruitful session for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafael. So yeah, I mean, I think before we start, I think everybody would want to learn more about our panelists today. So we'll start off with a brief introduction. So maybe ladies first. Maggie, perhaps you can give a bit of an introduction of yourself.
Hey, hi everyone. Good evening. This is Maggie Yung. I'm heading the digital customer experience and also the ecosystems for DBS Bank Hong Kong. So I'm very glad to be here tonight and share our thoughts and also insights about the ecosystem.
Thank you, Maggie. And Gary?
Hi, this is Gary Lam, CTO from Livi Bank. Can you hear me? Great, yeah. So today, very thankful FinTech Associate invitation that I can come and share some of the virtual brands related digital journey and ecosystem related ideas and some insights. And yeah, let's enjoy tonight, guys. Yeah, looking forward for the questions.
Thank you, Gary. Looking forward to it too. And Marc, who I think everybody here would be familiar with.
We'll see. Hi everyone. If you don't know me, I'm one of the founding directors of the FinTech Association. So hopefully you'll have seen me at some point or another, especially anyone, I guess, that comes along to this committee on a regular basis, which is where I've had the majority of the focus of my time. My day job has been for a long time in kind of strategy consulting. Currently in the process of moving in-house, which will be a bit of a change for me. But a lot of the recent years have been the evolution of virtual banking in Hong Kong, and in particular with a focus on partnerships and ecosystems. So hopefully some good sharing will come through tonight.
Thank you, Marc. So my first question for the bank's representatives is maybe you can share with us a bit about how does your bank actually define digital ecosystems and why is it important to you? Maggie, perhaps you can start first.
Okay, thanks for the questions. How do the bank define the ecosystem? Okay, ecosystem is all about partnership. So, but it's not tactical partnership, it's more strategic partnership. The way that we define is any partnership that is mutually beneficial to each party, and also to is digitally connected, and also there will be some data exchange. That is the way that we define what is the ecosystem. I think the key objective of the ecosystem play is to, of course, one is a customer acquisition. The other key objective is to increase the value proposition to both the business, us, and also to the customer. I think the final key objective is how we can leverage on the ecosystem to create new business model and generating new source of revenue. So that is how we look at the ecosystem.
Great, thank you, Maggie. And Gary, does Livi have a different take on the definition of ecosystems?
Yeah, so for us, ecosystem has a few roles. Ecosystem partners, they could be participants or creator or is like receiver. Yeah, for us as a bank, as a virtual bank, we trying to offer a seamless experience to our user, and while we taking opportunity to build many platform stuff, including recently Open API, CDI kind of initiative that we follow HKMA guidance, as well as we are taking the lead on pushing all the way to full data, digital and data-centric organization. While we are doing that, when ecosystem partners that joining us to work together, we usually define us as more like a platform participant, and sometimes we would be a platform creator for the more specific domain. Maybe later on we'll talk a little bit more about some of the products we do, like buy now, pay later. That how we create ecosystem while we are becoming platform providers instead of participants, in order to raise our customer experience in the journey. Yeah.
Right, and yeah, looking forward to understanding more about that. And for Marc, as a consultant, what's your take on digital ecosystems?
Thanks. Yeah, so I like both of those perspectives that we've had so far. And maybe to kind of touch on Maggie's point first, maybe one of the ways that I like to think about ecosystems is, I guess, more than just individual partnerships. It's really this kind of strategic sense of partnership where it's building up multiple partnerships, or a kind of a multi-partnership outlook, which is what brings us to ecosystems essentially. I like, as kind of with a management consulting hat on, my usual way of breaking it up it tends to be kind of product, tech, and distribution. And so if we were thinking on the product side, then maybe a simple example could be a bank partnering with a buy now, pay later provider rather than kind of necessarily building in-house. And that gets added into a suite of offerings rather than necessarily needing to create everything up front. So you kind of get the ability to scale products and services much faster from a tech capability perspective, rather than a legacy approach of big technology providers. Maybe it's working on the ability to be able to both build a kind of data lake and data analytics capability, so that once you start sharing data with all of these different providers, then how are you actually going to start leveraging some of that, so that you've kind of got more capabilities that's come out of the ability of having kind of insight into a greater set of partners, and potentially your partners' customers as well, right? Which kind of brings us to the third one, which is distribution partners, which is possibly the most kind of strategic of the three. And that's partnering with other players that probably have large existing sets of their own customers, of which there may or may not be overlap between the two sets of customer bases, but then being able to tap into those such that you then have a much greater customer acquisition funnel, but then also not just customer acquisition, but actually once we start thinking about customer engagement, then for engaging each of these customers, hopefully we get to a point of convergence at some point where those same customers now exist on both your own platform and your partner's platform. And through that element of data sharing, you're able to just understand that customer much more, kind of to a much deeper level, and be able to serve them and target them more effectively. And so we can get into, I imagine later, kind of some of the benefits that drop out of that. And then maybe just very quickly on Gary's point, kind of this concept of kind of orchestrator and participator of ecosystems certainly doesn't need to be one or the other. There may be kind of elements of both. And so you could imagine kind of picking key system kind of ecosystem orchestrators that already exist, potentially like a WeChat, could be a Facebook, and thinking actually these are already significant kind of aggregators of customers in their own right. So we should be thinking about participating in their ecosystem to some effect. But also what opportunities do we have actually to orchestrate our own ecosystem and then think about how then we can centralize kind of some of that interesting kind of customer information and lead some of those partnerships with third parties. So yeah, lots of interesting kind of possible implications that we can get into.
Yep, so we've kind of touched upon, let's say, the different types of roles like orchestrator and participants, as well as different types of partners where it comes down to product, tech, and distribution as well. So very broad, and would be really interesting to know actually, in particular for both Maggie and Gary, what have each of your banks been doing to develop and build these ecosystems? If you can give like an example and kind of your thoughts around that as well. Perhaps Maggie, you can start.
Yes.
First.
Yeah, I think first of all, we need to have a business case. We need to have a business need to, and also the customer need. It's not only the B2C. I think the ecosystem is, I think Gary talked about more on the consumer side. I think at DBS, we're also on the B2B side. And because I think if you provide the financing to our partners and also get it into a very fully embedded journey into our, for example, the SME or corporate customer, I think that should be something that to solve the problem. A, we solve the problem and make it more efficient today. And that's why we have a business case. B, we think that there's a value creation to the customer. So make it easy and convenient for them to do. On the consumer side, we have a case like, pay with points. So that means the customer can actually go into our partners, when they want to settle the payment, they use the points to settle part of the payment. So I think for us, it's as long as there's a business case, and also as long as there's a business need for us, and then we can actually pull all these resources together and build the ecosystem. So I think because the latest technology, I think we're solving the problem that have been with us for a long time. I think in the past it's more manual process. In the past it's more, disjointed in terms of customer journey. And right now, because we can use a lot of data, we can enable by a lot of digital technology, and that's why we can do a ecosystem. And that's why I think for us it's mainly to solve the problem and also create business opportunities.
Great, thank you, Maggie. And Gary, how about Livi Bank?
Cool. So just now I didn't give a full introduction of who and what is Livi Bank. Maybe I do a step back to talk about that before I can answer this question. So as you guys, some of you guys may know, Livi Bank is one of the 8 virtual banks in Hong Kong, starting from 2018 back then. Livi Bank actually starting a little bit later in 2019. So we are about 2 years old. Yeah. This month is actually our 2nd anniversary year. So we will celebrate very soon in this month. And as a virtual bank, our sponsor or our shareholders, they actually have 3 different company, gigantic organizations supporting us. One is BOC Hong Kong, and the other one is JD.com. The third one is Jardine Matheson. So the reason why I need to emphasize this, when we talk about ecosystem, first and foremost, we see ourselves as more like a FinTech, like what Marc said. Why do you want to build a buy now, pay later solution? Why don't you partner with a FinTech? On that front, rightly said, when we build this solution, we are looking forward to build it generically, that not only for Livi Bank customer, but we can also go to B markets to sell this as a banking as a service solution to other parties as well. And while we have this strong ecosystem provided by our shareholders, BOC Hong Kong, JD.com, and Jardine Matheson, is quite natural. You can think about that. One of the early demonstration showcase is while we launch our bank with YUU program actually in the same time, in around the same quarter in 2019. And at that time, I think as of now, even we are the only bank that have a strongly integration with, you can show your YUU points, one of the biggest loyalty program in Hong Kong, to show that point system within the Livi Bank application itself. By doing that, we naturally pull in the banking features of our customer day-to-day, how they do banking as usual, like digital banking, mobile banking. In the same time, we give them this loyalty program flavor in there while they're enjoying their life, doing their normal lifestyle, going to like Welcome 7-Eleven Mannings, and they can already seamlessly connect the payments and rewards in the same time. So that is how we demonstrate the first and foremost on as an ecosystem participant. Yeah, and just now we talk about buy now pay later again. On the buy now pay later side, while we are expanding our ecosystem network right now, we are exactly doing what Marc said. We go to the e-commerce company talking about, okay, traditionally or like in the last 5 years, while US, UK, or even Australia, their buy now pay later solution is very mature. In Hong Kong, very limited players over there. Yeah, while lots of these proven success of buy now pay later solutions that can successfully reduce the card conversion rate from increase from 40% to 70% of the e-commerce card conversion. So when the user try to check out their card, they are successfully adding 30% on that. While Hong Kong is lacking this kind of service to provide to our 2B customer, to our merchants, when we are building this ecosystem, we actually go to them, hey, we have these technical solutions, buy now pay later. We can offer a better customer journey to your customer, while they don't need to check out all in one go, and then they can do installment service. Yeah, while they're doing the shopping, and that actually gives a really huge drive to build our ecosystem and actually invite more partners to join our family. That is the second part that what I'm talking about as a platform builder, to let everyone to join this. Yeah.
Thank you. And so this is kind of like on the user experience side, where everything just becomes a lot more convenient for them to view their points and make payments as well. I mean, that's the topic that both, I think, Maggie and Gary touched upon. I think from Marc, your perspective, you've seen and worked with a lot of banks. Like, what do you think has also been, in your perspective, a positive impact? I mean, if possible, maybe share a bit of results as well of these kind of ecosystems that have been built with some of your perhaps past clients.
Yeah, so I think in Hong Kong we're quite fortunate really in that it's relatively early days for digital banking, but we've just had a huge acceleration that's happened really fast. With 8 new virtual banks launching all within a reasonably short kind of time frame. And then clearly lots of the existing banks, and Hong Kong is heavily banked, then all kind of launching kind of challenger propositions and evolving in their own right. So it's an exciting place to be. I liked kind of Gary's comment, kind of referring to Livi's shareholders, because it's one of the other things that makes, I think, Hong Kong interesting, in that most of the digital banks here are kind of natural ecosystems in their own right. And so Livi is a great example, because we've got the whole Bank of China and JD Digits and the Jardine Matheson group, of which a huge part of that is Dairy Farm, obviously, and all of the kind of customer facing elements that exist within that, whether it be 7-Eleven, Welcome, KFC, Pizza Hut, et cetera, right? And so there's it's bringing, I think, a different flavor to what consumers have really experienced from banking in the past, and turning it into more of a lifestyle proposition, which I think we've seen kind of followed by kind of buy now, pay later, and otherwise. We've seen bill splitting being introduced into several of the virtual banks now in Hong Kong. Like another example to pick a non-Livi example is maybe Mox, in that Mox, their equity partners are Hong Kong Telecom and Trip.com. So if you go into the Mox app, you can seamlessly switch your direct debits, so your auto pays, across from all of those to your Mox account. And so we know that auto pays are a pain point in Hong Kong. You typically have to print off a form, take that form into your bank. It's very non-digital. So being able to switch just through kind of instant, there's nothing to identify it. The bank should already know you very well, given the amount of KYC you have to do to open a bank account in the first place, and that will be switched kind of seamlessly for next month. So there's a lot of just small things that start to add up very quickly, that are more, I guess, lifestyle plays than what we've seen in the past. So clearly, from a consumer perspective, a lot of this will be customer experience focused.
How about Maggie? Do you have any thoughts around some positive impacts around experiences or product adoption?
Yeah, I think on the corporate banking side, commercial banking side, we actually think that all these capabilities will help us to form a source of differentiation. I think, in other words, Gary mentioned about, to provide value added to the merchant so that they can get onto the platform. I think we're more or less providing the platform and capabilities for our partners, so then either the financing, the way, and also the transactional capabilities, so that they can easily onboard for them, and then they can actually improve the scale up when they want to tap into the bigger market. I think for the retail banking side, I do believe that based on the project or based on the ecosystem experience, I think one value added to the customer is the customer experience. For them, I think in the past, in the good old days, it's difficult to disaggregate our banking services and distribute it through our partners. But today, we actually can disaggregate some of the services, be it the financing, the loan, the financing services, be it the payment services, and then we can actually fully embed into the customer journey. So they don't need to toggle around, different digital assets. They can, complete the journey in one go. For them, I think for me, the ultimate winner is our customer. But that's true, because we need all to be customer obsessed in order to get them, have a repeated purchase and also more business to us.
Great. So, I mean, Gary, as the CTO, I think what would be interesting to know is, obviously digital ecosystems can't happen without technology. So can you share a bit more about what are the underlying technologies that make it possible?
Sure. So as part of the community player, Open API, CDI, and other initiatives that HKMA is driving, we are fully support, and actually we are delivering every quarter as well on those kind of solutions that try to gel ecosystem together. Underneath that, I won't go into too details over there. If you look into CDI, actually is a blockchain at the underneath. That's all the ecosystem partner. They can own their own data without any knowledge. They can share the insights around the ecosystem. That actually enable us for a next level of data analytics capability. Because in traditionally, if we want to get, let's say, telecommunication company data, that they have a strict restriction that they cannot share any of these customer privacy information. However, the insights that can generate from a segment, a cluster of customer, that actually valuable, and that actually okay, because it's not disclosing any privacy information out there. While we have a blockchain solution provided by HKMA, aka CDI, Commercial Data Interchange, that we can easily do some commercial deals with other technology partners, platform partners, that we can do this collaboration. And then as a result, we can use this insights for our businesses. Also, on the other side, as you say, we are virtual banks. So supposedly, we are what we call native digital animals that I keep talking about. We don't have a large burden. We don't have a big resources either. But when we born as a company, we already is digital. As of now, we still do paperless. We have 0 human interventions. We do remote onboarding, right? Everyone just download an app, come in, install the app, and that's it. They got a bank account, and then they can start doing payment and even start doing credit cards and loans as well, right? So on that, the technology foundation is very important. And while we talk about ecosystem partners support, how to support them, we not only stop at that, we also try to push forward. Like recently, the hype in Web 3.0, right? Just now, when we first start the meeting 5 minutes ago, we are just launching our metaverse, a space, a building virtually in the Web3 space. That's why we are just launching the 5 minutes ago, and now it's live. With that, we envision we will now have an extra channel, not only livibank.com, but also we have a virtual address that our staff, our close partners, stakeholders, they can come in and look into our building and then start engaging with a totally different new ways. So that is, as I said again, we trying to use technology to be a forward runner for the entire Hong Kong banking industry, as well as we try to create this kind of a seamless platform that can enable all the ecosystem partners to join in, to create a party in our buildings and do all sorts of business events. Yeah, so I'm so excited on that. I just did it 5 minutes ago. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Must be first in the market.
Yeah.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
We didn't announce it because other banks, they like to announce it before they actually do it in a few months later. We either tend to build it rightly, get the right approval from MA and blessing, and then we just launch it. Yeah, so that's it where we are. Thank you.
Great, exciting.
Yeah.
And how about, I mean, that's very interesting take on technology. And how about Marc, like, what do you think are other aspects that, banks should consider when it comes down to utilizing technologies for digital ecosystems?
Well, I guess one point which is hopefully obvious to everyone, but I'll say it anyway, is just that one of the big differences between pretty much all of the virtual banks and a very small handful of some of the incumbent banks, of which DBS is an excellent example, have actually been able to make kind of proactive investments into technology. Before we had most of the kind of virtual banks in Hong Kong, there were just so many broken customer experiences, whether it be, and I've experienced this myself, of not being able to change my phone number without going into a branch, still the case with several banks. So many elements of your banking experience that you can maybe do through the website but cannot do through the app. Like all of these things, kind of as a customer, you might think, why don't they just fix it? But it's because the technology that all of this is based on is kind of 30 plus years old, right? And it's not easy to change core banking infrastructure because there's so much that could go wrong. And if you have millions of transactions kind of going through your bank, actually, even just the change management to be able to do that and not get penalized by the regulator for doing it slightly wrong is tough. And so when you're working with that kind of customer base in a regulated environment, it's hard. And so if you're in a position where you can start with a completely clean slate and you're on new shiny tech, then there's just so much that you can do that unlocks simple things like all of these kind of end impacts that we're talking about from nice customer experience. Actually, a lot of it needs a lot of that just enabling technology underneath. And there are lots of things that we could talk about, like such as being on the cloud native, not having kind of batch systems for trickling down address updates across multiple systems and all the rest of it. Just so many of these problems go away. And so I think it's the technology that's being used is not the goal, but it's certainly a huge facilitator to all of the end results that we want to achieve. And ultimately what HKMA wanted to achieve, right? Because let's not forget, the reason that we've had all these changes is because the regulator put in the ability to have new banking licenses, because it wanted new digital banks to shake up the industry. and ultimately that's for the good of consumers, and will push the existing banks kind of forwards as well, just through natural market forces. And then I won't talk about it much because kind of Gary's touched on it, but it's not just the banking licenses themselves, but a host of other initiatives that have come since then from the MA, of which some are Hong Kong specific and some are just global trends, which we could talk about in terms of the evolution of digital banking generally, such as open banking and kind of data sharing kind of between banks themselves, which is already still relatively early stage in Hong Kong, but making some good steps forwards. And we've seen an interesting twist on that with commercial data interchange and services to merchants kind of more within the commercial banking space. But also now the trend towards open finance more generally, and the insurance sector is now kind of launching open insurance as well. We're starting to see some of this now being applied across sectors, maybe, and so maybe I Am Smart and other such services are next as we start to plug banking into insurance and insurance into everything else, whether it be kind of health, agriculture, and so on and so on.
I totally agree with Marc. In one of my previous, I have spent all my life in like traditional banks. Yeah, in one of my previous bank, is like no one dare to restart the core banking system. It takes days to just restart it, and no one know how to reboot it. Yeah, and disaster recovery drill, the drill testing itself is another disaster. So it's so difficult for big banks to move along, but they have spent a lot of money investment, and I can see like someone like DBS is doing fantastic job in last like 10 years already. Yeah, they has been the digital driver all along. Yeah, and while we are doing our digital virtual bank, we can reimagine everything. So you know what? When we talk about core banking system, we have 60 servers in 2 locations, always on. We don't need to worry about disaster recovery. We're always active. Given that 50% of our nodes is always on, then our customer can have seamless service. So the entire thing, the entire standard, everything just changed in this kind of HKMA initiatives. I believe that is not only Livi Bank, right? So does the entire virtual banking industry is also leading similar way to moving forward, like what I said. Yeah.
You all touch my ping pong. You all touch my ping pong in transformations. I think at DBS, we actually now the fifth wave of the digital transformations. You can imagine last 10 years, we spent so much money, to transform, to build a culture and get the right modern tech stack in order to enable us to compete in the market. So it's not that easy, even though we talk about the API. I think API is not new things. I think Gary knows about it. We internalize and make it available for other systems to call, write the messages. But when we want to expose to the public, expose to the partners, there's so many things, so many infrastructure we need to build. And then it cannot be standardized because the way that we build internally is very different when we expose and consume by our partners. So there's a lot of things we need to do internally, but I want to ensure the incumbent bank like DBS, we actually make a lot of effort, the impact is much bigger. And that's why we can create a much bigger impact to our for our customer and also to the group as well. So a lot harder, but I think that's a different ball game.
Fantastic job there, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you, Gary, Maggie, because
and that's why I stay in the office.
Great.
Yeah, because actually, both of you and Marc as well touched upon the next question actually, and that I think I mean obviously when it comes down to partnerships, when you pick who to partner, what the use case is, there is a lot of different consideration, and what have you actually thought to be kind of the key challenges, like especially if applicable when you do digital transformation, when you have to find certain like third-party partners. Like, what do you think are the key barriers in progressing? So perhaps Marc can chime in first.
I mean, there are unfortunately many. So we've touched on some already, like technology, and I think it's worth kind of saying as well that. But tell you what, I'll come back to technology because there's more to say, but kind of culture for sure, because partnerships are, there's a human element to all partnerships, right? So there needs to be a compatibility of mindset, and there are big differences between working with big partners and small partners as well. And so working with small partners, there could be issues in terms of risk and procurement and legal aspects, which are always tough to work through, and shared liability and so on, which is still kind of an ongoing issue for data sharing, particularly with some of these external kind of open API relationships. And when they're big partners, then politics gets in the way very quickly as well. And that's actually on that same point. That's why I wanted to come back to tech. I mean, big partners sometimes can be a no-brainer if we're thinking about maybe the sheer number of maybe new customers that a strategic partnership would enable, say, a bank to be able to suddenly access by picking a big lifestyle partner or energy provider or whoever it may be. But given that we're not just talking about a marketing partnership or kind of giving away coupons or something, but there's a value exchange, there's data being exchanged. Hopefully we're not in a position anymore where we're just thinking about how many leads are we getting and compiling those in a spreadsheet, and then you're just sharing a flat file at the end of the month and then working through that. But at this point of digital banking, when we've got new technology stacks and data analytics capabilities and so on, like all of this stuff should be real time. We should have the ability to be able to then kind of analyze the data that comes back in real time, be able to make then dynamic changes back to our customers so that customers are effectively receiving a hyper-personalized experience, right? So if they go and do something with their partner, that has a knock-on effect, kind of an event trigger kind of back into the bank, and then suddenly you're being offered slightly different services than you were previously. But the reality is that as soon as we're talking about big partners have the same problem. Just like all large corporates all have legacy technology, the reality is they're not probably going to be able to facilitate that level of granular data sharing either. And so there's a lot that's possible, but the reality is, in terms of what's actually possible to implement, is we still need to be somewhat conservative. And so there's an extra level of, I guess, digital due diligence that needs to happen. And the reality is often behind aspiration. And so there's always a bit of a transformation journey on both sides of those partnerships to make it happen.
Thank you. And Maggie, Gary, do you kind of agree, or do you want to spice things up a bit and disagree somewhere?
I totally agree with what Marc said. And I think one of the key points I want to emphasize is the timing. Yeah. And not only about technology, but also about the business cycle, because not every business is under the same pace, whether they're investing, they're maturing their business, or they are getting the return out of the previous investment. Yeah. And while if we want to aggressively partner with an organization that is not ready, or we may not ready sometimes, and actually it takes a lot more efforts to do integration, technology investment, or even negotiate a business deal, because just not matching. So that is one of the challenges that I think worth highlight when we are talking about ecosystem partnership challenges. Yeah. And give you an example, just like when I can tell you the stage as of us now, after 24 months, 2 years old, is way more easier for us to talk to the external ecosystem partners rather than when we first launched. We only got a saving products, for example. How can anyone, if they want to, how can they help you, right? So I think that is a key point that I will highlight for you guys. Yeah.
Thank you. And Maggie, do you have any thoughts on challenges?
Yeah, I think I actually look at sorry, I need to compare with the MAS Singapore. And MAS Singapore actually has done a lot to enable the open banking and also the ecosystem. So it like the ID and identity verification process, and also the address informations, and also the tech, the government informations. They make it very easy for the commercial entities to fully consume the services and build into and back into the journey. So today, if I really want, I really like some of the services the government developed, but when I ask whether I can fully consume the services within my journey, they have a lot of hesitation. So and then the customer need to really go to the other digital asset or app to do the verifications. Why can't they actually let us to consume the services to build in my onboarding journey? So, but when I compare with the Singapore in terms of the open banking, in terms of financial aggregations, the provident fund information, all these informations, they can easily enable the bank to consume, so they can provide an overall view about your financial status, including your retirement fund. So I think there's things, if the conglomerate or the big group are not there yet, the government actually can take the lead. And so that when you have a chance to talk to them, and please express my view. So there's a lot of good things that we can fully integrate and make it commercialized and make it easy for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. We'll try and insert that in our next discussion with HKMA as well. So thank you. And we have a few questions for the panelists, but just one last question for all of you from my side is, you all mentioned also about some HKMA initiatives, CDI, open banking, etc., as well as FinTech 2025. What's your take on how, let's say, this whole digital ecosystem will change as these initiatives start launching? So perhaps Gary, you can start first.
Sure. Yeah. While we are looking into the strategy on FinTech 2025, as an industry of virtual banks, I think we have the duty to take the lead on. Hang on. How can I hand this?
We've lost your video, but I think we can still hear you, Gary.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Yeah, someone called me and yeah. We have the duty to take the lead to move forward by transforming the industry into more customer-centric, more seamless touch points, not only to C, but also to B. And also, we start seeing some opportunity. We can create some what we call a blue ocean by joining multiple ecosystems together that they cannot do that before without a proper platform or technologies, that we can start creating something new journey, not only enhance and smoothen the existing one, but create a new journey for them. Yeah. And while I think why we said we have a duty, because I think the entire VB 8 banks, we are the frequent visitors to the regulatory sandbox. Every product that we launch, we take a really prudent approach to do independent assessment, 3 months, do penetration tests, everything done. And afterwards, we are going to pick a small test market to just try the product out and see how the market responds, and then see how do we need to pivot our business or technology solution, is it fit for the markets? Yeah. By doing that, I think we generate a little bit kind of innovations, and in the same time we are doing this carefully, as I always say, baby steps. We're doing test and learn, doing baby step, and trying to get the right path for everyone. Then everyone just follow and work on it together. Also, in the same time, we for sure our staff members is coming from all over, from banking industry, e-commerce, and also like traditional fintech company as well. While doing that, I think we can learn and leverage a lot of the old days as well as the new days to drive this FinTech 2025 agenda forward for the country, for the region. Yeah.
Thank you, Gary. And Maggie, any thoughts on this as well?
I think we have been very supportive to all these FinTech 2025 and also open banking initiated by the by the Hong Kong MA and also all these other regulators. But I would urge the regulators to be more aggressive in terms of, in terms of timeline, in terms of commercialization, in terms of, supporting the bank, not only the virtual bank, but also the incumbent bank. And I think why we are actually heading to all these digital capabilities, we still have an old policy. They need to update the policy in order to get us to be more consistent in terms of digital journeys. And that's why internally we actually have a lot of struggles, why we're actually moving to, give you one example, identity verification, and somehow we still need to Weds signature, right? And why do I need to have Weds signature? What's the purpose of Weds signature? And then people give me the new debt of policy, why do we need to have a signature and then on the paper? And then I said, oh, there's a disjoint and also mislink. We're moving forward, but we still have something legacy. No one challenged them why, and whether they still update and refresh. We need to refresh together with the regulators. So I think we have been very supportive, and also we also get into different sandbox. I think just need to get they also need to get the pace with us, with the same pace, so that we can move faster together.
I agree with you, Maggie. While if we want to take the lead as a region players from Hong Kong and the ASEAN and Asia region, I definitely want to support that initiative with a faster pace and keep kind of challenging the status quo and see what's the right way, what a safe way to do innovation. Yeah.
I think there's a message there around pace of change, right? Is on one hand, it's evolving customer expectations around what you're going to get from your bank. It's the banks kind of evolving themselves. And then to Maggie's point, it's actually the regulator itself evolving as well, right? In terms of the services it's providing and the scope of change that it's trying to enact. So a lot of moving parts.
Great, thank you, all of the panelists. It was a very interesting session, and we actually have quite a few questions, so we'll try and see if we can cover most of them. So first question is on, for the panelists, what do you think are the most important barometers of success for ecosystem partners?
Sounds like my boss. Sounds like my boss. He always asks me these questions. I think usually, the businessmen don't have patience. He always look at, what is a business matrix? So what is our original objective? I cannot disclose others, some of the major, but they keep asking what is a key business matrix. Okay, like pay with points, simple. Everyone knows that we are working on this and on a massive base. But using the point redemption as a cost saving is not good enough. It's not good enough. So what can we get from these partners? Possibly because of people like the value proposition we can do, pay with points. So what else we can do it like, customer acquisitions, more sales, more engagement. And every engagement can be translated into an opportunity for us to sell the brand, to promote the brand. So every time when we present our numbers, when we present our ecosystem and partners for even some of the financing in terms of, B2B, we always look at the numbers. So they really want to track the numbers, the business numbers, and also the matrix, and all the way through. So for us, is the business numbers.
Do you wanna go, Gary? Otherwise, I'm happy to.
Okay. For us, I more look into the soft side because I'm technologist first of all, right? But I still look at the numbers. We more look into, are we creating anything extra when we adding two corporate together? Is it always 1 + 1 = 2 or equal to 1.5, or we can create more than 2, right? So when I say 2, what is that referring to is like, are we lower the customer acquisition cost for both parties? Are we increasing the total customer segments from before and after? Yeah. Are we generating a more business opportunity to tap into this kind of a new business model, whether we want to tap into? So these are the things that for a success of an ecosystem partnership on top of traditional kind of P&L, whether we get profit and loss. Yeah, because if 1 + 1 = 2, why do we collaborate together? It's always 2 from the GDP, from the region standpoint, right? So I always urge my ecosystem partners, when we work together, we are going to make an impact. We are going to help the communities. We are going to help our customer to have something much more than we do that individually. Yeah, so that's how I define our success.
Yeah. I can go conscious of time, but maybe just a couple of things I would chip in as well. That just, I think as we move into more ecosystem-based thinking, some of these metrics are different to what we may have perhaps considered in the past. So for example, like in the past, I guess banks probably were not really thinking that much about how much time customers are spending in-app. Generally, it's quite transactional, right? So in a sense, you almost want them, the least amount of time they spend in the app is a success, because you've kind of helped them do what they wanted to do, in and out, job done. You've kind of spared them from the dirtiness of banking, and know that you kind of pay as quickly as possible or check your balance as quickly as possible. Well, now if we're thinking from an ecosystem perspective, potentially you're spending a bit more time in app because you've actually got different things to engage with. You know, maybe you're checking your YUU points. You know, you could be doing all sorts of kind of non-traditional banking activities. And then, yeah, just measuring engagement levels rather than acquisition levels, I think is something that we'll see a big difference of for the virtual banks. It's so easy to open a virtual bank account. You could probably open all 8 within the same amount of time that typically you'd have opened a traditional bank account in the past, right? So if it's so easy to open an account, chances are you're going to have loads of accounts now rather than just one. So if your experience is not that great, you probably just drop it and use the next one because you've got them all anyway. So there's a lot more pressure on delivering a good customer experience than there used to be. So to what extent are they using your app? Kind of frequency of usage, how much, I mean, certainly in a consumer kind of banking environment, like how many transactions are going through. It's not necessarily whether it's just a payroll account or not a payroll account. It's yeah, very much usage based. We want people to be coming back. Exactly. MAU, DAU become our daily talking points in as a fintech. Yeah, you cannot get away from that. And as some kind of industry kind of proven example already, sometimes more customer engaging to the platform, increasing the cross-selling capability, sometimes it's more valuable than just looking for the revenue of getting money out of your customer pockets. Yeah. Yeah, and I wonder to what extent you're capturing data that your partners' engagement rates, and when they're engaging with the aspects of their customer journey that overlaps with yours, like does that feed into your metrics? Like it's a different way of measuring than previously. Yeah. Short answer is yes. Yeah, we keep both.
Great, thank you. Sorry, in the interest of time, we'll take just one question each for the 2 banks. So, but the rest, for the audience, happy to address the question, separately. So for DBS, one question is, what are you doing currently in the cloud space, if you can disclose that?
We are doing a lot of things on the cloud space. Even all these analytics. Internally, we have a called a data-driven operating model. So a lot of data analytics information actually stored in the cloud so that we can actually easily access for our daily decision making. I think that is one example. There's so many, even the structured and also unstructured data. We actually capture using all these A tagging to capture even your footprint, and so that enable us to do a lot of analysis. So almost every product line, they can access to the data, so that we need to do some analysis to make on a daily basis information.
Amazing.
Yeah, and for Livi's side, then is there any kind of plan or currently you're working on around blockchain technology? I think you briefly mentioned that before, but is there anything else that you'd like to share with us that Livi Bank is working on in the blockchain space?
Yeah, I think blockchain in the coming 5-10 years is one of the technology that we cannot neglect. Yeah, it's like a database. It's like database 20 years ago. Yeah, no one can walk away from that in 10 years time. And for sure, while I talk about commercial data interchange underneath, they already using the blockchain. We are user on that. What you can call technical terms like the app. Yeah, we are an app on top of the chain. Yeah. So whether or not you are building a blockchain or you are an application on top of a blockchain, I think this is something that I would encourage the entire industry participants that we also all have to look into that space. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we ran a bit over time, but appreciate everyone, the panelists, the participants as well, and hope that all of you enjoyed the session. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with the FTAHK team, and we can address that or speak to the panelists separately as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Rafael.
Marc.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.